Brad, you and I have never spoken live. You've never been on the stream, but thank you for just being like, hell yeah, what's up? Let's do it. My name is Crypto Jack. I do a live stream we just follow charts pretty much. We like to follow, what is Bitcoin doing, what's happening, and so we have a lot of discussions around Bitcoin price action. We
Right.
don't so much follow the drama per se. We're not after that. It's not we're not like a glorified tabloid or anything like that. But I couldn't help myself when I saw Kobe taking shots at you and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to bring you on. So let's just start with this, if it's okay. Like, who are you? What's your background? How'd you get into Bitcoin? Let's just take it from the top.
Yeah. My name's Brad Mills. I I guess I'm too much of a shitcoiner for Bitcoin maxis, and I'm too much of a Bitcoin maxi for shitcoiners. So I fit somewhere in the purgatory, in crypto purgatory, I guess, on the tribalism scale. If you're looking at me, I'm a Bitcoiner in the streets, a shitcoiner in the sheets. Uh,
Nice.
I'm a FOMO sapien, so I understand what most crypto people are like thinking when it comes to like trading altcoins and buying NFTs and mining Ethereum and all the stuff that they do to try to make money. Because when I got into Bitcoin in 2011, um, no concept of understanding markets. I was not into investing. I was an entrepreneur. I was in the gaming space, making Facebook games, and I had no business background at that point. I literally Googled how do I make money online, and I fell for a lot of Ponzi scams. And my early business career of trying to make money on the internet, I literally like got tricked by a lot of like high yield investment programs and auto surfs and MLMs and survey Ponzi's and all this crazy stuff that was going on in like the early 2000s on the internet. And then I became a real entrepreneur and I started a company making Facebook games, social games, and then did iPhone games as well. Did that for 5 or 6 years. Um, I was started making some real money, and then had savings for the first time in my life. Had some extra money to spend, and I realized like, well, I don't know anything about stocks, and I was looking, going through the the Fed, Occupy Wall Street, sort of Ron Paul, Peter Schiff time of 2008 to 2011, learning about libertarianism, learning about gold, looking at the stock market. It seemed like a big Ponzi scheme. It seemed like a scam. Everything was overvalued. The housing market, Wall Street's getting bailed out, et cetera, et cetera. So I found Bitcoin in 2011 as I was trying to buy some gold. So in 2011, I bought gold, silver, and Bitcoin as I was like reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and learning from people like Robert
Nice.
Kiyosaki and stuff about gold and scarcity and stuff like that. And this YouTuber had been teaching Canadians how to import gold into Canada without having to pay extra taxes on it, like import taxes and stuff. And he also had a tutorial about how to buy digital gold, Bitcoin. So when I saw Bitcoin, it was like libertarian money to me at the time. I was big into sound money and Austrian economics and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, this is perfect libertarian money. It's like virtual currency that there is nobody that can screw it up. It's decentralized. I had been using things like eGold in the past for when I was getting suckered into these Ponzi schemes in the early 2000s. And
Sure.
I had my eGold account seized when the FBI
Okay.
shut down eGold. So all this stuff came together, and I saw Bitcoin, and I realized it's great period plus digital gold. It's amazing. People are gonna one day use this thing for savings and payments and stuff like that. So that was how I got into Bitcoin. But it was really the idea that I could mine Bitcoin from my computer, from my gaming computer. I was using SETI at home at the time, and I was just like,
Oh,
I
SETI.
can actually just switch from SETI to this Bitcoin program and mine Bitcoin with my gaming computer. This is amazing. So I had that like FOMO as well that most people have, and most people come into the top of the funnel not through Austrian economics and investing principles like sound investment investing principles and you know being outraged by the scam that's happening in the global fiat markets, but they come into it because of things like FOMO and they're all like I was a Homo sapien, and most people are. So I try to like, I try to, I am principled in why I'm Bitcoin only when it comes to like educating and promoting.
Hmm.
I will only ever promote Bitcoin and saving in Bitcoin. And I'm pretty much turned off by the majority of what happens in crypto, like 99.9% of what happens in the crypto markets. To me, it's a lot of rebuilding the nonsense that made money broken in the first place, but putting it on a blockchain. And it's just a lot of VCs and Wall Street quants and stuff redoing the Cantillon effect that they got the first time with Web 2 and the current financial system, redoing it, putting it on a blockchain, surveilling it, pre-mining it, owning it, and distracting people from Bitcoin. So over the years, obviously I've been in Bitcoin now for 12 years or 11 years or whatever it's been, 11 years. And I was making so many mistakes. Like I sold half my Bitcoin from 2011 at $30. I heard about it at 5, and I was
Oh
like,
man.
I bought at 10. By the time my money got on the exchange, I got some at 10, and then it went to 30 that summer. And I'm like, I guess you're supposed to sell and take profits, so I'm gonna do the smart thing and
Yeah.
diversify. And sold half my Bitcoin at $30, thinking I'm so smart. So I mean, I've made all the mistakes. I also then I got back, into uh, trading Bitcoin in 2013 during that run,
Okay.
and I had my coins on Mt. Gox, and I was
Oh.
trading Bitcoin. I'm a trader now. And then I lost another big chunk of my Bitcoin on Mt. Gox, and that went under because I trusted the insiders. People like Roger Ver and Mark
Mhm.
Capellas were saying like, it's all fine. Keep your coins on the exchange. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So I learned all the lessons, man. Don't trust verify, not your keys, not your coins. And I I also had experience working in crypto when in 2017 I was working for a crypto fund that was investing all through that ICO mania that happened in 2017. I was like the Bitcoin guy. I was doing like an algorithmic trading thing for a part of the portfolio,
Nice.
and and we were just doing a Bitcoin trading algorithm, managing like 5% of the NAV or whatever. And but then they also had me on the investment committee, and so I was like vetting all these ICOs, and I'm doing all these calls and stuff. And we ended up investing in 60 different ICOs all through the ICO bubble. And I was like seeing how the sausage was made, and I was in there because a lot of my friends from the early days ended up becoming crypto, like, and fund managers or shitcoin founders or whatever. And so I still have one foot in that world and one foot in Bitcoin because I principally am aligned with Bitcoin only. But all my, not all, but a lot of my friends are in crypto. So I mean, these are guys I've known for 10 years or so that like they're all into crypto. So they'll always occasionally come to me with like deals and stuff, and they're like, "Hey, we're raising around for XYZ
Sure.
random nonsense thing." And sometimes I will invest in it if it's like a sweet enough deal that I can't pass it up because I know I'm going to make some money on it. So I can either buy Bitcoin, or what I have decided that I'm going to do to like be karmically positive is any money that I make on doing these pre-mined investments in crypto, I'm using it to support Bitcoiners that are building Bitcoin only businesses, and things like Human Rights Foundation, OpenSats, Brink Bitcoin, Geyser Fund, like these different projects where they're investing in Bitcoin open source technology, privacy technology, and Bitcoin developers. So I kind of like I get why Kobe and those people are making fun of me because I'm like very publicly Bitcoin only, and I'm outraged by I'm like the Peter Schiff of DeFi, outraged by all this stuff happening in crypto, and then I show up on the cap table of the crypto company. So
But yeah.
so, so
Hey, but
I get why they're
right,
upset.
and we'll I have some like specific questions on it, and we'll get to it. But kudos for not just going back, and a lot of people would do scorched earth, like delete everything and try to like brush it under the rug and run a full PR campaign. But kudos to you for sticking to it, and trying to explain yourself and taking that route.
Yeah, I don't know if I was digging myself into a hole even further with these folks, but because it's funny because like Kobe's canceling me. It's so funny. Kobe Kobe is canceling me because I'm a Bitcoiner on the cap table of this crypto company. Usually it's
Yeah,
like the Bitcoiners trying to cancel another Bitcoiner for not being Bitcoiner enough. But it's like the crypto guys are trying to cancel me. It's just so funny.
I think you get a lot of that in the bear markets. I think when you see these cycles and you look at these, the Wall Street psychology charts, and you see, you go from euphoric to where we are now, and it's pretty standard procedure, I think, to start taking swings all around you. So I, I
100%.
I'm not
It's that
surprised.
what's that Dunning Kugler or no, it's the grief cycles. I can't remember the specific
Mm.
name of it, but there's this grief cycle chart that goes along with the Wall Street cheat sheet or the Alpha
Oh,
Trends
okay.
market cycle chart that Ryan Shannon made, and it's like the psychology of grief. I like to apply that also to the crypto markets because it's not just the fear and greed index and like those emotions. It's like these things are like cults, like cryptocurrencies, like the NFT community and the DeFi community and the Bitcoin community. In a way, like some of them are just cults, some of them are religions. Like Bitcoin is more like a religion. It has like mimetic power
Yeah.
because it's so decentralized and because there's the mythology of like Satoshi and everything. It is like people cringe at this and say like it's not like a religion, but like I actually think it is like a religion, and that's a good thing. And some of them are just like cults, and it is like when the thing blows up, the price blows up, it can put you into like emotional state of PTSD or like grief,
Yeah.
not just like fear and grief.
Chat says Kubler Ross. I haven't fact checked that, but
Kubler, yeah, Kubler Ross sounds right.
well, so I do have to say this much. If you're talking about getting into Bitcoin in the early days, with that kind of libertarian focus, then you're probably one of the OOGs, like Roger Ver, and there was many others back then as well. But I know of many of them. Roger's a great example, who they join for the right reasons, and then next thing they kind of lose their focus with respect to Bitcoin specifically. And they had all the opportunity in the world. They had that leg up. They got there before everyone, and then kind of threw it away, threw it out the window. It seems like, to chase Bitcoin Cash in his example. But there's so many people like
Yeah.
that. So kudos for not being that guy.
Well, look, I'm not a smart enough guy as like most of those guys were to hold on to a lot of the Bitcoin from the early days. So I'm also like I have activity bias still, and I feel like I'm trying to like get back. Sometimes I feel
Yeah,
like this,
I
anyways.
think we're all
Get
like
back
that.
like the FOMO of like, oh, if I only had
Hmm.
if I've only had not sold those that half of my Bitcoin at 30, like I kind of let that go obviously a long time ago, but it must be still there in my psychology because I am at the point where I could just retire and be happy and like live my life, but I'm not at the point where like, Roger was like a millionaire
Yeah,
before Bitcoin. He
yeah,
bought like hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin or something like that. But yeah, I'm like comfortable and I'm like grateful for what I have, and I didn't like I didn't make all the mistakes. Like I got a bunch of friends that sold everything because they believed Bitcoin was, when the ETF was rejected the first time, and it actually pumped shortly after to like the new all-time high or the previous all-time high. This was like 2016, I think,
mm.
late 2016, back to $1,000. A lot of them just sold because they're like, finally, I'm in the black again. I could have sold at 2013 at
Yeah,
$1,100 or whatever. So a lot of people sold too much of their Bitcoin from the early days, and that's why a lot of them became like they kind of turned on Bitcoin because they're like got Bitcoin derangement syndrome in a way because they had so much Bitcoin and they sold it, and now they're like chasing it and they're like, I'm gonna start my own coin. That way I can get more Bitcoin or get wealthy or whatever. And a lot of it, like Roger Ver and other early Bitcoiners, it's ego. And ego is the biggest final boss for most individuals with
Yeah,
Bitcoin. If you're in
facts.
Bitcoin long enough, you're going to become influential, say in Bitcoin, you're going to get tempted to like be challenged to like your relevance to Bitcoin. And if you can't let yourself be worthless or, if you can't let yourself know in terms of like what the mission of Bitcoin is or what we're trying to do here to fix money, if your ego is too big, then you're going to likely get canceled and it'll affect you. And then you'll probably react like egotistically in a way. And like your ego will want to defend your position. And then you'll, like you said, like delete all your tweets and defend it like in a way that you're rewriting your principles and your morals and stuff like that to like create defenses that
Yeah.
end up making you sell your Bitcoin or become an enemy of Bitcoin, or like Roger Ver, just go from Bitcoin Jesus to like, the shitcoin guy selling Ripple and everything in the temple.
I'd forgotten about Bitcoin Jesus. Yeah, that was one of his nicknames. That's, man,
Yeah.
how far some people fall for sure. So with this kind of latest stuff, with this, and by the way, and before I'd ask this, I do want to say you're in good company for, the regrets from the early days, that kind of thing. Charlie Lee is somebody we have on constantly, and I've done. I got into the
Oh,
world of
cool.
kind of like collectible, physical collectibles. So Charlie is actually someone who would sell to me, and he's been a good mentor because he'd be like, hey, now listen, if you buy this, you could instead buy Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin for, into infinity. You don't have to buy this from me. So he's actually been like a really good kind of a mentor
That's
when it
good.
comes to that. But he's speaking from experience, just like what you're saying. He has these stories where he bought what he thought was a great deal at the time, and it was 100 Bitcoin for some object, and at the time that was $5,000 total. And now he looks back on that, and you could see he about throws up. You could see his face just like
Yeah,
kind of
I bet.
grimace. He's like, "Oh, why did I do that?" But so with this kind of recent, I'm going to call it controversy, right? With the Kobe cancellation, that's a good way to put it. Do you kind of see where they're coming from, or do you think they're being unfair about it all?
Bitcoiners or shitcoiners?
No, the outsiders. Let's start with the outsiders, the Kobe types.
Oh, well, look, I get why both of them are, are like calling me out. I get it for sure. Like Kobe's Kobe's got a point. Like it appears like I'm being a hypocrite by being so critical of what like VCs are doing in crypto and
Sure.
then going and doing it myself. So yeah, I can see why he would quote tweet that and like roast me and joke about it. I also understand why Bitcoiners would be calling me a shitcoiner and like all that stuff because um it's it's like again I guess I'm perceived online on Twitter as people follow me because I read the tweets and the people are like, oh, I liked this guy and now he's not a Bitcoiner anymore or whatever, and I'm like like there's a lot of psychology here, and this is like why I don't promote this to other people because I didn't expect that they were going to tweet my name on the thing. And usually, like, I'll ask like for discretion if I'm doing something like this because I don't want to amplify the network effects of crypto
Hmm.
companies and crypto blockchain stuff. Like, I don't want to amplify the network effects of Ethereum or, like sometimes I struggle with the like I see the game theory advantage to amplify the network effects of Binance Smart Chain and Solana because it eats away at the network effects of Ethereum. And this is a war, like really, it's a long term war on proof of work
The
and
cannibal
proof of
side, that's what you're talking about. The cannibalistic side where
yeah,
these coins
yeah,
will kind
like
of eat into each other.
Ethereum doesn't really compete with Bitcoin. It competes with other smart contract chains, the network, but the asset ETH competes with Bitcoin. Everything competes with Bitcoin for store of value and for moneyness properties. So I feel like game theoretically it makes sense to amplify the network effects of other blockchains to help reduce the network effects of Ethereum, because they're trying really hard. They've been for like a year and a half. I mean, A16Z, the whole Silicon Valley elite circle, Tim Ferriss, Kevin Rose, all of those guys in Silicon Valley, they're super influential. They've been amplifying the network effects of Ethereum. The whole ESG crowd, like the Ripple guys, have teamed up with like A16Z and the Ethereum Foundation, the World Economic Forum, to like FUD proof of work and amplify ESG narratives and
Yeah.
try to elevate proof of stake over proof of work. So I mean, really, it is a war. Like there was a war for Bitcoin in 2017, the block
Hmm.
size war. That was like Bitcoiners versus other Bitcoiners and corporations, like miners, corporations, etc. There is a war now. It's like Bitcoin versus Silicon Valley and the woke mob, and all of crypto for the most part is on the other side of that battle. So like I look at myself as not that important. So I get why Bitcoiners, like some Bitcoiners, would be like upset by me doing that, but I don't expect that I'm like going to be looked at as like Roger Ver was looked at, or even like Nick Carter was looked at, or
Yeah.
any super influential person. So like I kind of expected it, which is why I typically don't want to be like, I don't promote any of this stuff. Like I will never tweet about this project coin or whatever, because I really do look at it like I'm extracting value from this crypto bubble that's going to happen regardless of if I participate in it or not. I have like the ability to find trends and to identify when the bubble is going to heat up. So I rationalized it by like 2 years ago when DeFi summer was about to kick off. I could tell it was going to happen because I'm following crypto very closely. Like I said, I have this circle of friends that are all into crypto. They're sending me all this information. I'm like sucking in all the sentiment and stuff from Telegram rooms and Twitter and whatever. And I'm like, I'm identifying that there's about to be another alt season, another big crypto bubble. So I can do two things. I can be triggered by it and continually just get triggered by it and just be frustrated that it's happening. Or I can like deploy some landmines and like use my proximity to the money printer and extract as much value from these crypto VCs and A16Z and these guys and all these crypto traders that are like just trading with each other on Twitter. I can extract some value from the crypto bubble and then redeploy it to Bitcoin and have some capital allocation going towards Bitcoin only developers and entrepreneurs who aren't following it. So I mean that's the way that I really kind of like planned it or rationalized it or whatever. That
Is this why you on Twitter you have the Robin Hood profile picture? You're like stealing from the degens to give to the Bitcoiners, something like
part
that.
partly, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like it's an homage to Ross Ulbricht as well,
Mm,
because Ross Ulbricht used the Dread Pirate Roberts,
right.
and that actor Carrie Elways played both Dread Pirate Roberts and Robin Hood in
Okay.
Robin Hood Men in Tights. So it's kind of like a respect thing to Ross Ulbricht, like a nod, and then also like yeah, I'm doing a little Robin Hood action
All
on
right. So
crypto.
here, this is the question, right? This is kind of, I guess, morally speaking, this is where I'm sure a lot of the Bitcoiners kind of their jimmies get rustled. But the question of the day, probably, if I were them, and I'm not so I'm a trader first and foremost, and I want to make money so that I can buy Bitcoin. So this is not about like any judgment from my side, but kind of the gray area that you find yourself in. What I think some of these guys would say is, okay, like, so what's the difference between, say, investing in a startup that you think has potential that you can later sell, Ethereum being a great example, Solana, whatever, um and what's the difference between that and, say, being a Richard Hart and creating your own?
Um, what's the difference between like just investing in like silently as like a VC, like as an LP or an angel or whatever
Mm-hmm.
in the pre-mine of a coin versus launching the coin.
Yeah, versus like where's the line between um investing to
Yeah,
benefit from it
I
later
gotcha.
versus like kind of going all in. I used Richard Hart and Hex as like a like the bookend. Like you
Well,
couldn't
look,
get no worse than that.
I look at things like on a spectrum, and I look at like things as a net positive, net negative for Bitcoin and for the world spectrum. And also I believe that like the no true Scotsman fallacy is like rampant on in Bitcoin Twitter, at least. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you own a chair, you're not a real Bitcoiner or
Pierre,
whatever.
yeah.
So like some of that's just memes, like that's just funny memes. It's hilarious. Like,
Sell your chair, buy
sell your
Bitcoin.
chair.
Uh-huh.
But like some people actually don't have any nuanced understanding or perspective at all, and they actually believe that like if you own any other asset beside Bitcoin, or if you like don't like repeat the mantra that they heard from some Bitcoin influencer or educator or whatever who does have a nuanced take and understanding,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just a shit coiner and you know not worthy of a pass to the Citadel and all this sort of stuff. Which
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of used to think like that a little bit. Like I was very ideological at the beginning, while also having that like fear of missing out FOMO thing. But like back when I got into Bitcoin, it was just Bitcoin. There was no altcoins really.
Mm.
I mean, there was Namecoin, but
Oh,
Namecoin. I remember like I was also mining Namecoin in 2011. I think it was 2011. Maybe it was 2012.
impressive.
But it was like to get more Bitcoin, right? It was like always to just like, oh, I'm gonna, swap this for Bitcoin. And it wasn't like Namecoin is gonna compete with Bitcoin as store of value and digital payments. It was just like there's another token. But like the more that the space like became a space instead of just Bitcoin plus some other experiments, even Litecoin,
Mm-hmm.
much proof of work coin or whatever, the venture capitalists kind of got into the space in 2016, 17, whatever.
Yeah.
Like even back in 2013, 14, when Ripple was kind of doing the Ripple or whatever, Bitcoiners were fine with that. It was just like either like, oh, that's an interesting experiment, or they're going to try it out, like play with it or whatever. Sure, there was a group of Bitcoiners that were like, that's a shit coin, like that's not, that's wrong, it's immoral, whatever. But there was a lot less hostility back 7, 8 years ago. I think it really was the block size wars when a lot of early Bitcoiners and Coinbase and Bitmain and some other mining companies and exchanges and stuff, when they really did turn against Bitcoin and attacked Bitcoin, it hardened a lot of people, and myself included, because it felt like there was an attack on Bitcoin that opportunists and charlatans were like taking advantage of, and people like Vitalik and other altcoiners and altcoin founders and stuff were actually like piling on to the battle and amplifying Bitcoin Cash and Rogers narratives because they knew it was going to weaken Bitcoin. And so that created like a PTSD and like a visceral reaction from people who are into Bitcoin and others that creates Bitcoin maximalism. It's like a mimetic desire that it just is. It's just part of the reality of Bitcoin. So I think that it's a spectrum, and like I think that what Richard Hart's doing is really no different than what most DeFi coins are. Like Richard Hart actually just built like a very complicated DeFi protocol before the DeFi bubble happened. Like
Okay.
all of the things that he put into Hex are pretty much what A16Z is investing in DeFi. So like Coinbase and A16Z and all these companies are pretty much just doing what Richard Hart is doing. So like I would put what Richard Hart did in the same bucket as what Uniswap and Compound and Yearn and all the Silicon Valley guys did with the DeFi projects, pumping them like crazy and putting the founders on these massive podcasts and selling it to retail as if it's the future of finance. It's the same with Ohm, like the Ohm coin and Wonderland and all that stuff. That's,
Oh man.
to me, no different than what Richard Hart did. So I would say that if you're just a neutral participant in these markets, whether you're buying the ICO or trading or whatever, and you're not shilling and getting paid to shill and amplifying network effects of these projects, then I'd say that's more of like a net, like neutral
Okay.
perspective.
Sure.
So like if you're not out there creating bag holders and selling bad, like shilling bad logic to new participants that are coming into the space, if you're out there creating a million people to think Celsius is a crypto bank that's safer than a bank and blah blah blah, and you're going to get yield, for sure that's net negative because they're basically like creating bag holders and cult members for something that's going to blow up. So I think that like Richard Hart and A16Z and Chris Dixon and all those guys pretty much are on the same net negative scale when it
Okay.
comes to creating bad logic and pushing it out to hundreds of thousands of people. Like
And
Safe
also,
Moon.
and you had made the other point too that even though you're redeploying some of the gains into, for example, the Bitcoin specific projects, rather than more of the DeFi or whatever shit coins and that kind of stuff, right? That was part of the good side of it, the net positive side.
So can you cut out just a little bit there? Can you say that
Yeah,
again?
yeah. No, I was saying, you were talking about net negative and the spectrum and all that, and I was saying, yeah, and on top of that, like you mentioned earlier, that your plan or the way you operate is redeploying back into Bitcoin, and so that's part of the positive side that swings things to the positive side in your eye. I'm speaking for you, but
Yeah, I mean, like, look, if I'm gonna rationalize being in the pre-mine of a shitcoin, then I'm gonna do it that way. I'm gonna
sure,
redeploy proceeds
sure.
after I pay taxes,
Well, let me ask you this.
investing in Bitcoin companies and Bitcoin development.
Yeah, right, right. Let me
That's the
ask
way
you
that I
this.
can, I actually do feel like that's like it puts me back to like karmically positive
Okay, okay,
because I'm killing. I don't try to. I'm not creating more bag holders. They're going to raise the money anyway. It's not like my small check is going to like make or break this thing. I don't feel like I'm adding anything to the network effects of these projects. In
uh-huh,
fact, I'm lucky that they even let me invest in some of this stuff because they know most likely if they follow me on Twitter that I don't like this stuff and
sure.
I'm going to be very critical of it online. So it's kind of funny that they'll still let me join the
Be a part of
round.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the question. Do you think the Pope should invest in whorehouses and strip clubs?
I think that's like the Pope kind of already has a good scam going with tithing. So
Don't
so the
rock the
Pope
boat.
doesn't need to do that.
I see.
Yeah.
I
He
see
doesn't
now.
he doesn't need to do that.
That's good. That's funny.
But that's a good line of thought though, like if you believe that it's immoral to have like a prostitution
Right.
business, would
Yeah.
it be smart to then just, oh, it's going to happen anyway, I'm just going to start a few brothels and then and then
Yeah,
use the
yeah.
money to build some churches?
Exactly. Right. Like, well, as long as I reallocate it. So it's just an interesting interesting
As long as
conversation.
you repent, I think that would probably get
There you go.
you. You know.
Well, it's funny, in the streaming world, I try to keep things very very even keel and level headed and teach about the boom and busts of Bitcoin and along with that, all the altcoins that go with it, stuff like that. So it's interesting when people come in and they're like, well, Ethereum outperformed Bitcoin, therefore Ethereum is the future and it's the best coin. And it's fun to be like, well,
Right.
actually, Doge outperformed Ethereum, so I think
Exactly.
the meme coin wins, right? If that's like what we're gonna go. So it's interesting, and it kind of opens the door into like more of that. Okay, why is Bitcoin special kind of conversation? But so I did have just a quick follow up though. Did Is there anything else that like you're proud of that you were an early seed investor of that maybe you hadn't talked about before, or is that something you don't even want to get into? You don't even want to like open that can of
Um,
worms.
I didn't actually invest in many companies until probably like I had the opportunity to invest in Kraken seed round back in like 2013,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and I didn't do it because I was like, Bitcoin was so cheap, and I'm like, Bitcoin's gonna go one day to probably $10,000. So is Kraken gonna outperform that kind of
Yeah.
gain? So back then it was kind of like, I had a few opportunities to invest in seed rounds of some big companies. Like obviously it probably would have been smart to do it with just dollars. I probably should have just thought about like diversifying out of like, taking some revenue from the business and
No,
just
no,
putting
that's
that in.
bad
But
Bitcoin. Bad Bitcoiner. You can't
yeah,
diversify. It's only Bitcoin,
I
right?
mean, I didn't like I came from a poor area of Canada, which I didn't have any financial intelligence. Like I had no financial IQ. I was making every wrong mistake you could make because I had no education about what to do with money and how to manage risk. So like I was like all in on everything I did. I was just like, I guess you just go all in on everything. And then I just made all the mistakes. So it took me like 10 years to understand how to even just hold Bitcoin without like I use Casa now because I know that I have
Hmm.
this FOMO inside of me, this thing that like wants to override my fundamental understanding of what Bitcoin is and where it's going. So I use Casa so that I can protect myself from my degen side,
Sure.
and like I have to take a plane trip to access my stash. So like I protect myself that way. Whereas before it would be like, oh man, I can get a discount on blah blah blah. Well, I'll just take 20% of my Bitcoin and do this, and then maybe I'll 10x it. And like, you have all these
Yeah.
thoughts and feelings, and it just the idea of risk management. Unless you're like trying specifically to learn strategies around risk management, you're probably going to screw up. And that's another reason why I only advocate for saving a Bitcoin and thinking about it in a 10-year time frame and learning about
Yeah.
why you want to own Bitcoin rather than trading or investing as a VC or trying to get an insider edge, because 99% of people are just, as you probably know and probably talk about and educate your audience about, like most people are going to lose to Mr. Market. They're not going
Yeah,
to
every time
succeed at it.
you get chopped up. As soon as you think you know what's going on, it's usually when you get rugged or things go the opposite way. Quick side note, you just mentioned being Canadian. I actually didn't know that, but um, I'm out of Texas. Okay, I'm like on the opposite side of North America from you. But the one of the single most important events that brought a lot of my normie, like IRL normie friends into the Bitcoin world, that got them asking me questions. It wasn't me hounding them, it was them coming to me. Was the truckers, the whole Canada trucker
Oh yeah.
situation, and then so they're looking around like, if that could happen there, and if people could have their bank accounts taken and all that, all of a sudden that was a first world issue, and it really hadn't been before that. It had, like, oh well, Mr. Bitcoiner, don't try to sell me on what you're talking about because that stuff will never happen here. And all of a sudden it happened next door, and it got a lot of wealthy people that I interact with on a daily basis asking me, okay, what do I do? Jack, where do we go? What, tell me a ledger. What's a ledger wallet? So we have these conversations about having your Bitcoin not leaving on exchanges. What is a node and all that kind of stuff. So getting into the weeds about it. Um, but unfortunately, I don't think we're done seeing that kind of stuff globally. I think we're just gonna keep
Oh,
seeing
we're
more and
just getting
more.
started.
Ugh.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I kind of sidestepped it. I didn't mean to. I rambled a little bit. But some companies that I've invested in, like I've invested in things like Galloy Money, which is the company that built the Bitcoin Beach wallet. So
Oh,
they
awesome.
they're yeah, they're like doing community banking network so that I mean, most people don't want to run a node. That's just reality.
Yeah.
And no, most people don't need to run a node. But the idea that like Bitcoin is going to be deployed in communities like Bitcoin Beach, where there's like a almost like a credit union where they run a node and you have an account with them, so you're not quite self custody of your Bitcoin, but you're in a trusted setup with a community bank that's got a node and they're self custody and sovereign with the
Right.
Bitcoin, and then you're a merchant, you're earning like $10, $20, $30 a day, whatever in Bitcoin. And as it gets up to a point that makes sense to like do an on-chain transaction to take it to your own like savings account, your own
Hmm.
on-chain or Lightning Network savings account on Bitcoin, then you do that. So like I love that concept. I love the idea of like making it easy and using circles of trust globally to deploy Bitcoin. So Galloway Money is a big one that like is a company that I'm very proud of like supporting. And actually the founder of Galloway Money, Nicholas Berti, he came into this Bitcoin space through the crypto funnel. He came into like he was a VR guy. He had a business doing VR.
Mm.
And in 2017, the ICO bubble kind of like was a huge thing and it sucked a lot of tech entrepreneurs and investors into crypto. And he was one of those folks. He came into crypto. He didn't come into Bitcoin. He came into crypto. He founded an ICO. He did his own like ICO coin and built his own blockchain. And then he
Jeez.
realized that like this is not where the most impact can be had. I'm not building on the bleeding edge. I am not contributing. So he kind of like learned that as he went on, and he realized that like the bleeding edge of this technology is the Lightning Network,
Hmm.
and to have a meaningful impact on the world and to people who really will have their lives affected and changed by this technology is to work on the Lightning Network and to do globally with things like Bitcoin Beach. So like I was inspired by that story as well because it shows like there's going to be a lot of people that come into the crypto funnel and maybe they're doing unethical things or immoral things or whatever and they don't realize that like what they're doing is actually adding nothing valuable to the world. They're just thrifting whether they know it or not, or they're just being selfish or whatever, they're just making money. I'm trying not to moralize money, but like in a way, there is a scale of ethical and useful things to be doing for humanity and, and with your time and your life. And I think that as people start to really understand what this space is, and they realize the big impact that you can have by working on Bitcoin and by sharing like sound information about what Bitcoin really can do for the world, it's almost like a moral imperative to focus on doing that. Now, I try not to judge people for not doing that because obviously you got to think about yourself and your family, and not everybody desires to go and like spend their time donating to charities and serving homeless people and evangelizing Bitcoin or whatever, you
Right.
know. But like people do make that transition. They come into the crypto funnel. They're either trading, they're doing ICOs, they're doing NFTs, they're doing utility coins, whatever it is they're doing. They're launching projects, they're starting funds. I mean, Corey from Swan is another perfect example of that. He came into Bitcoin actually through crypto.
Yeah,
And he
through
was like,
EOS or something, right? EOS.
yeah, it was like the team that was doing EOS also had like a venture fund doing crypto investing, and he was working with that fund. And he also then like kind of like realized that oh, this is this. He was seeing how the sausage was made there, and he kind of eventually came to the conclusion that Bitcoin is where it's at, and like there's actually something here that can meaningfully impact the world and change the world in not like a cringy like cliche way, but in a real way. And so he's now like one of the strongest network effects for Bitcoin because of what he's been doing with Swan Bitcoin. And like they're not like an exchange, really. They're an education company and a media company,
Hmm.
and they've got like they're significantly a net positive network effect for Bitcoin. And he came in through the crypto funnel. So
It's funny.
I I think that like there is going to be more and more and more of that, of people coming in through the crypto funnel as these bubbles go crazy and all these new uh, entrants get sucked into things like Axie Infinity and NFT Bored Apes and like Safe Moon and all this stuff that drew millions of, like, Celsius and stuff, Luna, like, drew millions of people in with these false promises of like these really dumb narratives that are being shilled at them by VCs and influencers. Eventually, they figure it out. Hopefully, there will be a percentage of these people, like 1% of the like 3 or 4 million people, will actually convert to becoming like Bitcoiners, in that they're going to start a Bitcoin company, become a Bitcoin educator, become a Bitcoin culture node, like creating music or art or whatever, and become like an actual like net positive network effect for Bitcoin. So I like to support that as well. So that's why I love talking to anybody that wants to talk to me about this stuff, like yourself, because what's the point of just talking to other Bitcoiners all the time? Like, majority of people coming into the space are not coming in through the Bitcoin funnel;
Hmm.
they're coming in through the crypto funnel. So it's a nuanced thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Bitcoin maxis tolerate me because they see my perspective. I consider myself a Bitcoin maxi, but not the sell your children and kid
Oh well,
music
there you go. I
shares and
didn't
that
know
kind of
that.
stuff.
I
Yeah.
just figured because of the name Crypto Jack that you weren't a
That's more
Bitcoin
branding than
maxi guy.
anything. Yeah, no, you got to get them in. So this was something somebody taught me early on. They said, if you're going to make an impact, you have to get your audience first. It doesn't matter, you've got to play the tricks. And another way he put it, he said you have to trick your audience into coming in. And it's not like you lie to them and promise them all kinds of things, but you might say, hey, today we're going to focus on Doge. And you'll look at Doge and you'll talk about it, but you'll also be sure to remind everyone Doge is not where you want to keep your wealth, for the next 10 years.
Right.
So it's that
No,
kind
that's
of stuff.
awesome. Like,
Yeah.
that's another kind of like nuanced, net positive thing, because somebody's gonna search Doge TA on
Right.
YouTube,
Exactly.
and I'd rather like a Bitcoiner that is gonna, like, Chris Dunn or somebody like that, who's knows what this shit's really about and knows how
Yeah.
the sausage is made, to tell people information about the price of these coins, and then funnel them towards sound information about Bitcoin, rather than being like Elon Musk, who's like, yeah,
Yeah.
Doge is faster and a bigger
Oh
block
my
size, and it's
God.
going to be the
Yeah.
currency of Mars. And so, like, I love people like yourself that do that, man. It's like we need more good nodes in the educational network that speak crypto, because a lot of Bitcoiners get turned off completely and they just don't even want to touch it. They don't want to
Hmm.
talk about it. They
Yeah.
just they just think it's repulsive or whatever. They're just not interested in it. And I get yelled at all the time by other Bitcoiners because I'm always trying to talk about DeFi and NFTs and all this stuff, and they're just like, I don't want to talk about it. Just shut up about
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's me or BitBoy. It's like there's a
Exactly.
demand. You can fill the demand, or you can sidestep it and put your head in the ground and do nothing.
Like, even the altcoin daily guys, I mean, they, obviously they get paid to shill altcoins. It
Hmm.
leaked that they're one of the groups that gets paid a lot of money to like shill for ICO coins or whatever. But I mean, they are like on the net positive or negative scale. I feel like they're probably like either in the middle or slightly positive, because they're not like BitBoy. Like, BitBoy is definitely just garbage information. So like Altcoin Daily is like one of the biggest crypto channels on YouTube, and maybe they're more like ETH believers than I'd like, but I feel like they do like you. They bring on Bitcoiners and talk about Bitcoin stuff, and do it in a way that's going to help people that maybe would never have been exposed to Bitcoin logic
Right.
because they're listening to BitBoy.
Well, I'm like an angry parent with my chat. We'll do polls from time to time, and I'm like, what you'd be so surprised to see how many not sorry, how many Ethereum maxis, how many ETH maxis are in the chat constantly. And so we have these discussions of like, are you sure you want to be in ETH maxi? Is that really what you want to do? And just kind of giving them a hard time. But and they love to throw it back in my face when ETH has a good day, and then you blink and
Oh,
it's down 50% versus Bitcoin, and there you go, But who knows, man? It is a fun space, and I mean, I do what I can. You're doing what you can, and at the end of the day, it's all we can do, just to help get people onboarded and bring them on. Somebody in my chat did want me to ask you, and I think it's a good question. He just said, does Brad use TA? Which I think is a fair question. You've been around long enough. Do you use any kind of technical analysis, chart analysis, any of that?
I used to try to do that, but I've kind of I've kind of realized or just given in to the idea that I'm just an investor. I'm not a trader.
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, I used to write with, not like, I'm not a coder, so like I came up with like algorithms for like trend following algorithms, and I'd hire people to write algorithms for me that would back test really well and make like 50 to 100% or something annually on altcoin trading. But then like it was a lot of work, and it was just
Hmm.
constant like staying on top of the signals and tweaking it, and like integration with all the APIs, and shit would change but then like Bitcoin would pump like 300% or something, and I'd be like, why am I putting all this time and energy into doing all this shit when I can just hold Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Like even now, if I had just bought Bitcoin in 2011 and I just not done anything, I would be much more like better off than if I tried to do anything else. And even though that opportunity is like kind of like lower, a lot lower than it was in 2011, I do think that Bitcoin is going to probably $1 million range or something over the next 10 years. By 2030, say Bitcoin at $1 million would, if it's not there, it would be very surprising to me. So that's quite a return. So like I gave up on trying to learn candlesticks and patterns and
Hmm.
even trend following, like just basic trend following.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I kind of want to, I kind of want to learn how to hedge though, because it does
Sure.
suck continually losing 80% of your net worth. That does suck. Even though I know where Bitcoin's going, like I feel dumb for, I know I can identify trends, and I was calling Bitcoin to go down to 20K, and everybody was calling me crazy
Hmm.
for a good like 8 months. And I called the top of NFTs, I called the top of like ETH and Bitcoin and all a lot of stuff. It was just, I feel like I'm very good at identifying trends, but executing on the trades is not my strong suit. So like I'm too emotional or whatever it is. I just learned to just not trade. I'm gonna try not to trade. I'm an investor. I got to deal with that.
Yeah. I give you one tip for just based off the information you gave me right there, and this is like unique to not sorry, this is not unique to you. This is the trick for everybody. It's if and this is something I learned, right? I didn't come up with this, but there's a guy who was telling me much older than me, and he had been trading for his whole life, but he said every time you feel like you know exactly what's going to happen, take whatever trade you were going to make and only trade 10% of it. So whether that's
Oh, that's a smart idea.
a buy or sell or whatever, he said, and if you're trading these big trends, which is like kind of my style of trading, it's over weeks and months. It's not like day trading or anything. But if
Hmm.
you're right about the trend, you'll have plenty of times to add to that position or get out of the position if that's really what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So if you break it down and you're trading over, with like kind of a weeks and months mindset, it slows you way down and it keeps you from those big nasty paper cuts and stuff. But yeah, so this stream specifically, what we do is we look at a lot of trend analysis and what I like to focus on is the rotation points. So not necessarily like, okay, are we in an uptrend? Great. What are you going to do with that? Yay, we're still going up. But like, when is that trend starting to break, or when is the downtrend starting to break? What does that look like? What is
Right.
accumulation, and what does all that turn into? So anyway, all that being said, you're always welcome here if you if you want some kind of like a beginner's crash course or intro to everything I do is free. I do all my content's free, and I don't have any paywalls or anything. So I just try to get
Nice.
people's feet wet with all this stuff.
Well, here I'll send you my. I just made a Trading View account recently, so I could
Nice.
screw around with
They're uh
some drawing some stuff up. I
they're
created a. Oh, go ahead.
I was just say they basically sponsor the stream. They give me like a special, premium
Oh,
edition,
cool.
whatever, and then they sent me a coffee cup. So they're big supporters.
Well, I created I created the account so I could make my own indicator called Total Shit, and
Okay.
total shit was the total two index minus stable coins, so that I could see like the real value of everything, but all the non-Bitcoin stuff, non-Bitcoin, non-wrapped Bitcoin, non-wrapped asset, like removes all that stuff, and it's just the total value of the crypto markets, and
Interesting.
then pretty much called a 50% drop in the whole thing back in January, and then I sent you a link.
I have it.
Um,
I have it pulled up. Chat's looking at it. I pulled up your
oh, okay,
tweet
I
and then
can't
I
see that.
clicked on the image itself. So
The
they're
trading
looking
view.
at it. Yeah, the
So I
trading view
mean, like,
chart.
I I meant to draw this even earlier. Like I was calling like ETH to go and even Bitcoin. I was expecting 20K, and I'm a bear on Ethereum for sure for a while, but the crash happened even faster on Ethereum than I thought it would. I thought the merge FOMO would like prevent ETH from dropping below $1,000
It just like
for a
tanked.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I drew on the chart like there's going to be I think I said 30 to 50% pump in Ethereum from the bottom with the merge FOMO, and then it's going to like global macro is probably going to be shitty, continue to be like
Yeah.
negative,
Facts.
and
Yeah.
ETH's going to continue its march to $500. And like I feel like I did pretty good for my first trading view chart, and it's based on the fundamental analysis of like kind of what you said earlier, that ETH didn't even do as good as Dogecoin or SafeMoon or Bored Ape Yacht Club or any of these other memes that didn't have any fundamentals to them. Like the value in the pump of ETH was just like rationalized by ETH promoters as, oh well, ETH is going to be a deflationary asset. We're changing with the IP 1559 for it to be lower stock to flow ratio than Bitcoin, and ETH has got all this
Stock to
utility
flow.
because of
Yeah.
like blah blah blah. Like really, I think what made ETH pop was the same thing that made everything else pop that's in crypto. It's like Bitcoin gave permission for everything to pump, and a bunch of people poured billions of dollars into pumping ETH and pumping altcoins and pumping meme coins, pumping NFTs, and the same thing is going to happen as what happened in previous cycles. Like the market's going to realize that all that rise in value was just a bubble, and it's going to continually march down lower to through this bear market. And the only thing that can save ETH right now is the Federal Reserve and the central banks just completely flipping the switch and like putting everything back into risk on pump mode. But
Yeah. Well
the
put.
more
And I think Bitcoin's in that same camp though. I think they're all kind of correlated.
Bitcoin, I think, is also in like I'm now that we're down to where I thought we would go, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Like I was pretty convicted that back when this was back when China banned Bitcoin even, and Elon Musk started flooding Bitcoin and promoting
Mhm.
Doge. I was like, this is not gonna. The China mining ban is a really serious thing. The ESG war is a really serious thing. Um, that's like that's another thing that I did. I did this machine greens.com. It's a documentary on Bitcoin and Bitcoin's energy usage. So like I hired me and a like bunch of other Bitcoiners actually fund a documentary to get made. I'm also funding other documentaries and stuff about Bitcoin. So there's more value in Bitcoin than there's value in ETH and other cryptocurrencies fundamentally. So I think that we could find a bottom on Bitcoin. We could have already even found a bottom on Bitcoin for fundamental reasons. even if World War III and the Great Depression 2.0 happens, Bitcoin's not probably going to do very well in that environment. But there is a reality where Bitcoin has found a bottom already, even if the markets continue to like control demolition, by the central banks, and the dollar loses hegemonic status, and the global reserve asset gets balkanized from the U.S. treasuries to like multiple things, maybe including Bitcoin. I don't think that that's happened for ETH or any other altcoin. Like there is, in my opinion, there is a fundamental thesis for Bitcoin having already found a bottom, even if we go into another, if this is like, the worst case scenario, Great Depression. Um, ETH, NFTs, like nobody gives a shit about that. Like the biggest use case is money. People need is protection from failing money globally. Bitcoin is really the only decentralized asset, and smart people are figuring that out. Like if there is a litmus test, crypto is a litmus test, Ethereum is a litmus test, and some people are going to fail that litmus test. They're going to fall victim to these siren calls of Mike Novogratz and Raul Paul and people
Woo!
like that,
Yeah.
and they're going to get wrecked, and they're going to buy into false narratives of things that are not as valuable as Bitcoin fundamentally, like Ethereum and other altcoins. And this is not to say that there's no value. I'm not saying there's no value in Ethereum. Like I've kind of given up that like thesis,
Argument. Yeah.
because I used to think that. I used to think, like, even up until maybe a couple of years ago, I just was like, this is all nonsense. It's a bubble. Bitcoin is really the only thing that's going to be valuable long term. A lot of Bitcoiners say like money trends to one,
Yeah.
it's a winner take all market and things like that. But I don't think that there's absolutely zero value in crypto anymore. I think that there's going to be, just like there's value in penny stocks and there's value in casinos and there's value in like brothels or whatever. Like there's always going to be value in things that you think shouldn't have value, as long as the markets are free and there's charlatans and grifters and people that can pump and do unethical things to like wash trade and whatever. So, and even if you don't go down that moralizing path like I'm doing right now, like if you just say that like crypto has value for things like decentralized lending, decentralized exchange, um, things that are enabled by DeFi that can't be done in traditional markets, if you steelman the argument, then you're applying value investing mechanics to it, and then it's just like a crypto stock market, and you can have multiple $1 trillion of market cap in crypto over the next few years. You can have $2 to $5 trillion total market cap over the next 5 years, whatever, in crypto, while Bitcoin continues its march to like global reserve asset status at 10-20 trillion dollars. And that's what I think is going to happen. I think Bitcoin is going to separate itself from everything else. There's a lot of merge FOMO right now, but when you actually look at the ETH asset, separate the ETH asset from the Ethereum network, Ethereum is like, back in 2000 or like the 1800s, I think it was, maybe it was the 1600s. I forget the dates now, but aluminum was discovered, and there was a crazy FOMO bubble in aluminum for a few years. Like the price of aluminum went to $1,000
Oh wow.
a kilo, I think it was, which was like way more than the price of gold. And Napoleon actually used to serve the children and the servants with the gold and silverware, and used to give his esteemed guests the aluminum silverware.
Huh.
It was like this crazy bubble in this thing, because they discovered aluminum. It was like a different properties that seemed like it was better than gold, and it was more scarce than gold. Well, it wasn't until like they realized that they advanced technology that they could actually get aluminum much more abundantly in the earth. And it's not that the price of aluminum ended up like cratering compared to gold, and people lost everything who had speculated on aluminum. And it's not that there was no value in the aluminum business or aluminum. In fact, like during World War II, the aluminum trade was like one of the most important trades in the world because it was, creating all these weapons of war, and aluminum was used in that. And during the Industrial
Oh,
Revolution, like aluminum actually became extremely valuable. But if you had invested in aluminum, you're destroyed, like you're financially ruined instead of gold. Like Ethereum is digital aluminum. Like Ethereum and Ethereum second layers can have all of the derivatives volume, like all the notional volume of derivatives in the world, like quadrillions of dollars of notional value can be settled on Ethereum for trading derivatives and synthetics and stuff like that. And Ethereum can still be less than $500 a coin, the ETH asset, because
oof,
it is digital
oof.
aluminum, really. Like it can have a meaningful impact. DeFi can become a mainstream thing. I don't think it will be, but if I'm steel manning it, DeFi can become a mainstream thing, and ETH, the asset, can still be worth like much less than Bitcoin. You get a $500 ETH, $1 million Bitcoin, and I don't think people are prepared for that.
Jeez. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. I think there may be an angry mob forming behind you outside your house with the with the with the ETH sentiment. So $1 million Bitcoin, $500 ETH. Man, that'd be something to behold.
Are you prepared?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I don't care. I'm a dollars or Bitcoin person. I'm a buy the dip in Bitcoin, and then during the next bull run, look for opportunities to multiply that. That's my personal plan with all this stuff. So yeah, I mean, if that's what happens, that's what happens. My big issue with Ethereum, it's not necessarily like pinning a price to it, in comparison to Bitcoin or anything, but it's the notion of proof of stake. I'm just inherently against it, and I don't think I feel like people are being sold a bag of goods when it's not going to do what they think it'll do, and the just being let's go back to that the Canadian trucker example. People were
Right.
specifically targeted and forced to comply by the state, and in
Yeah.
a proof of stake system, when you have the biggest stakeholders can be found, I'm sure, by the state, that I'm sure that would be not very hard, and a gun can be held to their head or their loved one's head or whatever, or maybe it's more incentives based that, if they get together and say, hey, well, what if we did this? All of a sudden, I think what people think is really being built there. The reality sets in of what's going to happen, or what could happen. So it's like the game theory side is more what I'm concerned with. That being said, I think if Bitcoin goes on a face melting bull run, I firmly believe it's like one of these rising tides raise all ships kind of things. And you know, if Ethereum's $100 at the start of it, it'll be 1,000 by the end of it, or whatever. Like it'll pump along with everything else, just like Ripple will, and whatever. Like that's my personal take. But what happens between now and the start of the next bull run is anybody's guess. 100%. There's no telling.
So I think that's possible for sure. It's like you'd be dumb if you didn't consider that we could have another repeat. Like a lot of us felt like there would not be another repeat of 2017 and 2018. And majority of market participants were shocked that we had an pretty much exact repeat of the
Yeah.
last bubble. And then even more shocked when we have the same repeat of the bubble pop and the bear market. And it's like
Yeah.
we got like blindsided on both sides.
Oh
And
man.
it wasn't just Bitcoiners that miscalled this thing happening. It was all the DeFi ETH maxis and stuff. Like they totally misplayed it too, because like you said earlier, most of my friends were ETH maxis that were like vindicated during DeFi summer or whatever, because ETH got saved and like DeFi became a thing, and like they started making money hand over fist doing all this DeFi stuff. They expected that when Bitcoin started to break all-time highs, that well, ETH and DeFi, the quote unquote blue chip DeFi coins, were just going to have their day in the sun. It was going to be game over for Bitcoin. And but then it was freaking Dogecoin and
Uh
SafeMoon and all this crazy shit, and
yeah.
all the blue chip DeFi coins just went down. It was just like pain and suffering for all these ETH maxis, and it was like Solana was ripping, and then eventually Avalanche had its turn, and Harmony and Cosmos, and like all these other layers. There was like this whole rotation thing. So, and the NFTs and like all these ETH
Oh
guys
my
and crypto
God.
traders, mostly the crypto traders were against NFTs. They were like, NFTs
Mm-hmm.
are stupid. Like, what?
Yep.
Why would you buy a JPEG? So everybody got freaking blindsided, I think, this cycle, and then the super cycle thing.
Yeah.
We all got wrecked, like in terms of what we thought was going to happen. Except, I think, like because because of that happening, the chances of it happening again, you I don't know, man. I don't know if it's gonna happen another time. Okay, like the two times, all right, we'll give it to you. Okay, but the third time again, like tens of millions of people got like taught lessons in this bubble in
Yeah.
this latest round,
There's
and it's
always more
still melting.
fools. There's always more
But it's like
fools.
it's true, but like it's still melting down, and macro is not looking good. Like there's the war in Ukraine is like looks like it's going to spread. Inflation is not stopping.
Right.
The Fed like the central banks all over the world, like confidence is waning in the bond markets, like the deepest, most liquid markets that drive trust all over the world.
Yeah.
Like things do not look good right now, and fast forward a year from now, if we're continuing on this path, like we're in the eye of the hurricane right now.
Right.
It's not like, oh, we've gotten out of the worst is over. Like SBF and all these guys are trying to say like, oh, the worst is over.
Get
We
out
can
of
go
here.
up from
Yeah,
here.
no shot. Get out of here.
No way. Like
No, they're just trying
unless
to encourage activity on their exchanges and get some fees and stuff. No, no way.
I I I think that, and like they've got massive bags of pre-mined coins, and if they can't provide confidence to the market participants and
Sure.
signal that they got this, then we're going to keep selling off, and there's a lot more risk still, contagion risk from the last 6 months that's still to flush out. And I think we're in the eye of the hurricane. I think there's going to be a lot more pain, especially like I saw two tweets today that Twitter showed me. The algorithm showed me this. Uh, one confirmation guy, Nick Talomino or whatever his name is, spent $3.1 million on a crypto punk or something like that, and he posted this thread in his thesis and why he spent $3.1 million on
Oh
a
my
crypto punk,
God. Okay.
and like some other guy was like spent 500 ETH on a ENS domain or something like that, and posted a whole thread on why he's super long bullish on ENS.ETH domains. And like, we're still seeing, like Coinbase posted that stupid video, and then
Oh,
Kathy Wood
God
sold
help
all
us
of her
all.
Coinbase stock.
Yeah.
Like, we are still not in capitulation. We haven't had capitulation yet.
Yeah.
And once we have real capitulation, I think that just like just like how information propagates about scams in other markets,
Mm-hmm.
information will propagate to the next billion people that are because you're friends with somebody who got ripped off on Celsius, or sold a bill of goods with Luna, or their favorite celebrity like endorsed this NFT project that got rugged or whatever. Like, so like information will propagate widely because enough people came in this bubble and got wrecked on all this bad stuff, that just like how you would not go and buy a penny stock if a friend says, oh yeah, I saw this like sewing machine company that is going to pump, like you're like, oh yeah, that's a pink sheet penny stock thing, I'm not doing that.
You're like,
Or like an
nah.
MLM, like a network marketing company. Oh, I got this really great line of vitamins you can make $1,000 a day with. You're like,
Right,
yeah, I'm
right,
good.
right.
I'm good.
No
So
thanks.
like we learn, like we don't have another Beanie Baby bubble. We don't have another like tulip bulb bubble. We don't have people FOMOing into MLM companies and binary options and penny stocks. And like eventually when this stuff gets big enough and it touches millions or tens of millions of people and they have a bad experience, they are new nodes in the information propagation network of like, avoid this scam. Like there's only so many people that are going to be scammed by robocallers pretending that you're going to jail if you don't pay your taxes. Like
Right.
at some point everybody realizes, oh, this is not
It's all BS.
legitimate.
Yeah.
So I think the idea that we're going to repeat the cycle again, and that like we didn't have this cycle, we didn't have anybody really shilling utility coin ICOs like the dog walking network coin, or like we didn't have people shilling masternode coins. We didn't have people shilling Bitcoin forks. All that shit from the last cycle, it was repackaged and they created new narratives around it. Like the new utility coin ICO is the DEX offering for DeFi coins, or like the food Ponzi coin or whatever. And the new Masternode coin is the ETH merge. It's like the inflationary, you know, token that gives you interest, like Celsius and whatever. Like there, it's nothing but like repackaged narratives from the previous bubble, slightly changed enough that it'll attract a new audience. But I don't think they can do that much more pivoting to like fool another 100 million to a billion people during the next cycle of mass adoption. What I think is going to happen during the next cycle is that regulators are going to come in and tame the market, just like they tamed the gold market and the mining market and the oil markets. Like I went back and read reminiscences of a stock operator a
Great
couple
book.
months ago.
Yeah.
I'm going through the book Titan by about Rockefeller, and it's talking about all similar things that we're seeing with the crypto markets. It's Wild West, wildcat banking. It's like bubbles that cause massive surges of people that come and try to get rich and build and try to mine and find, you know, parcels of land that have oil or whatever. It's like finding your NFT set that you can mint and make money. It's very reminiscent, it's very parallel to what was happening in previous industries and previous
Hmm.
financial bubbles. And eventually, if it gets big enough, it gets tamed, regulated. There's a roll up phase, there's a consolidation phase. And then it's like less likely that you're going to have the same type of nonsense that happened at the very beginning of the discovery of this new industry. So to steelman crypto, to say that like, not to say it's just shitcoin nonsense, it's all going to go away, like with the Bitcoin, like I used to think, and like I happen, but I don't think will happen anymore.
Mm-mm.
I think to steelman it and say that it is a new industry, even if you say it's a new industry and it's not going away, it is going to get regulated. It's 100% going to get regulated. There's going to be consolidation phase. Somebody like FTX and you know Alameda are going to be a Circle, Jump Capital, all these folks that are already regulated and trying not to get sent to jail are going to cooperate with global regulators. They're going to enforce KYC, AML. They're going to bend over backwards to keep their profits and comply. They're going to like get the proper securities licenses. They're going to do the proper reporting. They're going to like
Right.
tame this market. So then it becomes more like stocks. It becomes more like digital securities. Like the idea that like Aave and Curve and Uniswap can have coins that fee share can make sense in the next cycle. You can be like, well, this is like a tech company. You can value it based on its total fees it shares back to the token holders
Yeah.
and the
PE
LPs or
ratios
whatever.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you do a PE rate. So I think the markets are the crypto markets are going to kind of tame towards those sort of like rational markets. And if they don't, we're in just total nonsense world, total like clown world times 10, where it's UBI is like everybody's getting paid to stay home, interest rates are -5%, the government's buying houses for you and
Right.
subsidizing your student loans and every like
You own
we're
nothing and you're
we're we're in
happy
that world.
eating grasshoppers and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, hyperinflation. Like we're gonna be, I think, if there's another crypto bubble like there was the last two in 2025, it's gonna be chaos world. And I think the more likely scenario is, like I said, it'll tame, it'll get regulated, it will still be massive. Like if there's another bubble, there can still be like multiple $1 trillion of market cap because there can be tons of innovation and like Nasdaq company, like companies can actually exist in DeFi like they can actually put the stock market in decentralized markets or whatever on
Right.
blockchains. I'm just saying if that happens, but it's not like, oh well, Nasdaq coin is going to be $2 trillion. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's going to make sense. So, and then of course you're going to have like pump and dumps and penny stocks and stuff like that. But I don't think that we will see celebrity like
Yeah.
celebrities getting away with the same crap they
Oh
got away with
gosh.
this cycle,
Some of that
the next
stuff
cycle.
I still don't, yeah, I still don't even know how some of that, how those guys are like in jail or investigated or like headline news or something, some of the things we saw. But yeah, it's fun to
Oh
think
man,
about
yeah.
like the what ifs and what's to come and what it might be. um but yeah, that's good stuff, man. Well, let's do this. Let's have you back on. Let's kind of daydream about the future. We'll check up again and talk about some stuff. But I appreciate you being here and telling us about, kind of your take on all this stuff and your background and all that. And chat's loved it. They've loved having you here. We'll do a little YouTube video, kind of package it up and cut it into, smaller, shorter time frame. I'll share that with you, and then you can view it or share it or whatever you want to do at that point too. But
Yeah.
anything you wanna shill? How do you want people to like reach out to you or learn about you, or what do you want 'em?
Yeah. Yeah, man, like I said, I mean, I spend most of this time talking about crypto, which is funny. I do that often. I end up going on about why I'm negative and bearish on crypto. So I should probably learn how to control that. But
It's okay.
like I'd rather I should probably use the time when I'm talking to people to like educate folks about what is going on in Bitcoin, because like I said, I'm spending most of my time in Bitcoin, and there is tons of activity in Bitcoin. Like there's lots of people building in Bitcoin. There's so much activity happening in Bitcoin. I can't even keep up with it. It's overwhelming the amount of new people coming into Bitcoin, building on Bitcoin, starting Bitcoin companies, like whether they're building on Liquid Network or Lightning Network or just Bitcoin straight up, or doing Bitcoin education companies or whatever. So there's, one of the projects that I am proud of is this thing called Geyser, and it's actually inspired by two things. There was the project on Ethereum actually called Gitcoin, which was a consensus funded crowdfunding, like quadratic funding, they called it, product that
Okay.
consensus built during the bear market of the last cycle, and it actually like helped Ethereum stay relevant,
Hmm.
because a lot of people that would have had to go back to McDonald's instead of talking about Ethereum on their podcast got funded through the bear market to keep talking about ETH and keep building things for ETH. So it's like, why don't we have that for Bitcoin? Like, we should have a community funded thing where anybody that's doing an interesting project for like not just development, but Bitcoin culture. Like, if you got a YouTube show, or if you got an
Hmm.
idea for a documentary or an album or artwork or whatever, then you're contributing to Bitcoin culture and you should have some funding for that.
Hmm.
So it's like Kickstarter meets the B Foundation, which was a project that Giacomo Zucco and
I remember
Jameson
that.
Lopp and
Yeah.
yeah, they were going to do that, and it was, I loved the concept. I loved it. It was such a good idea. I was like, this is exactly what we need to like compete with the other foundations like
Hmm.
Stellar Foundation and Ethereum Foundation and Consensus and all this stuff that are doing that. Like, but Bitcoin maxis got really up in a tiff about it because they were trying to. It was like, oh, you're trying to represent Bitcoin officially, but
Yeah.
I mean, so they stopped it and they were like, oh, well, we don't want to upset everybody. But I'm like, screw that. Like, I don't mind upsetting Bitcoiners by helping Bitcoin, so
Yeah.
I'm
Good
gonna
for
do it.
you.
So like, I found these two guys, Mick and Stelios, who were already building like these Bitcoin guys that were doing Lightning Network, a crowdfunding project for Lightning Network. It's like Kickstarter, where you could like use the Lightning Network for anybody
Mm.
in any country. Because currently crowdfunding is kind of broken. Across borders and certain jurisdictions, you can't even do Indiegogo or Kickstarter. So they're building like using Bitcoin to unlock crowdfunding for everybody in a sovereign non-custodial way. So I helped like those guys with that, and I invested in kind of help them bootstrap this thing. And we're at the point now where we're doing our first round of grants, where we got 60 applications so far from folks just through July. That, you know, it's just MVP, right? We're just like lean startup style, putting this out and letting people submit applications like, what are you building for Bitcoin? Are you an educator? Are you a developer? Are you a artist? Whatever it is. So check out Geyser Fund on Twitter, and you know, like that's a good way to pay attention to what's
Awesome.
going on with Bitcoin. And for everybody else, that, you know, I would suggest also, like, Preston Pish has an amazing podcast. If people haven't
Yeah.
heard that yet, you know, like listen to him. And obviously listen to Crypto Jack, but like stop listening to BitBoy and listen to Preston Pish.
Yeah. Yeah. Facts.
Just follow more Bitcoiner, like Bitcoiner information. Really, just
There
don't
you go.
follow me on Twitter. I'm not a real Bitcoiner, obviously, as you
You're
can
already
tell from
canceled.
Kobe's tweets.
You don't even
Yeah,
yeah, you don't even have a Twitter account anymore. You're canceled.
I'm canceled. Don't follow me. I mean, I do have a podcast, Magic Internet Money, but I'm not very consistent with it. I do like
Mm,
one a month. Um, so yeah, check out Geyser Fund. I'm pretty excited about that, and just try to plug into Bitcoin stuff, because I know it's like it's tough to like really plug into Bitcoin information if you're not going to make money on it.
right.
But if you don't have the conviction of knowing what's going on with Bitcoin, you'll fall for these like gaslight campaigns that Udi and others are doing all the time, saying like nobody's building on Bitcoin. You know, all the stuff's getting built on crypto, and like MetaMask has more users than Bitcoin, and blah blah blah. Like there's all
Right.
this
All that
gaslighting going
trash.
on.
Yeah.
It's not real. Like plug into Bitcoin, disconnect from Bitcoin toxicity. I don't like Bitcoin toxicity. I like Bitcoin maximalism. It's the rational, ethical choice, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'd like to like embrace maximalism in learning more about Bitcoin and following smart Bitcoin people, and then reject the toxicity part. And it's tough to do that because there's so much nonsense happening
Right.
that it's easy to be toxic. But yeah,
Well, good deal, man. Well, thanks for being here, and like I said, we'll bring you back on. We'll catch back up and kind of we'll see if we get our $1 million Bitcoin or $500 ETH, and see what happens with this bear market over the next coming months. So anyway, Brad, thank you
yeah,
for being
man,
here, my friend. We'll catch up again soon. Okay.
awesome. Well, good chatting with you.
All right. You too. See you, man. I'm not trying to be perma bulljack, perma bearjack, just charts jack. Just whatever the charts are telling you, that is all I'm good for. That's all I'm here for. And nothing else. I'm not your hype man. I'm not your bear guy telling you to sell, sell, sell.